The thousands of Tennessee fans in the Horseshoe on Saturday night were a lot like Lane Kiffin on Saturday night. Very, very quiet. As the Buckeyes flex their muscle and dominate Tennessee, they are headed to the Rose Bowl.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Look, I know that there's a lot of Big Ten backers out there that want to yell back. You saw the Ohio State fans at the end of this game. SEC, SEC, right? They're doing that mock chant certainly right now. And there are other people on other shows that are going to yell and say, Tennessee didn't deserve to be in the playoff, in combating what some people said about Indiana after their Friday night loss. But I'm going to take the Tony Petitti route. I'm going to take that quiet confidence route. I'm going to let the game do the talking, and I'm going to talk about the game here because this game was an absolute and utter beatdown from the opening kickoff. It is abundantly clear to me. If it's not abundantly clear to you now, it should be. This was abundantly clear to me during the season, in the middle of October, going to November, the top of the Big Ten. The Big Ten as a whole had much better contenders and much better teams at the top of the conference than the SEC certainly did. So this should not be a surprising result. Now, I did predict a defensive 3-point win for the Ohio State Buckeyes, but seeing this type of victory is exactly what Ohio State needed. And I think in the back of my head, I thought this is a possibility that could happen if Ohio State came into this game and came out of this game right out of the locker room on absolute fire with the right mentality. I talked about it in my preview. The mentality between the ears was the biggest thing. Like, we know all about the $20 million roster. We know all about the talent is there. Nobody's questioning the national championship level roster, the national championship level talent that the Ohio State Buckeyes have on their roster and on their team. How was this team going to react coming out of that 13-10 loss 3 weeks ago to the Michigan Wolverines? Well, it turns out, they came out pretty good. They had an aggressive mindset, where in the Michigan game, they had a passive mindset, right? We're going to get into maybe some of the comparisons. We're going to get into offense. We're going to get into defense. But between the years, they had their focus dialed in, certainly from the word go. They got back to championship level football that we know the Ohio State Buckeyes can play. When they are dialed in, when Chip Kelly is calling a good game, when Ryan Day has these guys ready to play, when they're not playing a team with a winged helmet or maize and blue, this is a team that can make a run all the way to Atlanta, all the way to a January 20th win and a national championship victory. I think there is absolutely no doubt about that. Now, kind of circling back to that Big Ten and SEC conversation that everybody loves to talk about, it seems like now in the world of college football, these teams were not equal. They weren't even close to equal. Okay, Ohio State, you can argue whether were they the number 2 team in the Big Ten, were they the number 3 team in the Big Ten. Of course, they weren't in the championship game, so they must have been the number 3 team in the Big Ten. I think talent-wise, they're certainly up there in a 1A and 1B situation with the Oregon Ducks right now. Tennessee was the number 3 team coming out of the SEC, and these, like Ohio State, like I just said, when they are focused, when they are dialed in, when they are ready to go, they are a national championship level football team, and Tennessee is not. Tennessee is climbing the ladder. They haven't gotten to great. They haven't gotten to elite. Ohio State is certainly sitting there at elite. Ohio State outgained Tennessee 473 yards to 256. Yes, that vaunted Tennessee defense was absolutely torched. They were absolutely torn apart by this Ohio State team. Tennessee got into 16 third down situations. They converted just 6 of them, right? When you get into 16 third downs on the road, 100,000 people, I know there were a lot of Tennessee fans in attendance, but when you get into a road type of environment against this type of defense, against the top defense in college football with a younger quarterback, yeah, it's not going to go well for you. Ohio State just got into 9 third down situations. And here's a stat that's kind of crazy as well. In the first 3 quarters, through the first 3 quarters of this game, Ohio State averaged 8.4 yards per play. And that's where I want to start into my takeaways. Explosive offense, dominant defense. It has been the formula in Columbus, Ohio for many, many years. And the offense was very, very explosive tonight. Now, when we talked about Tennessee's defense in the preview, when a lot of other people talked about Tennessee's defense, they were talking about the front 7. How was that Tennessee front 7 going to match up against that Ohio State offensive line, which of course we know has had a couple of season-ending injuries? Turns out the Buckeye offensive line did pretty good against this Tennessee front. But Chip Kelly, I think he probably saw this during the week. I'm assuming he saw this during the week, the way he certainly came out of this game. He said, we got a big-time advantage in terms of athleticism, in terms of skill, in terms of speed on the perimeter with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and some of these other performers certainly out there on the perimeter. And the Tennessee defensive backs, they were just, I talked about that ladder, right, in terms of an overall team where Ohio State is at that elite level and Tennessee is at that good level. There was a big gap, and you saw Chip Kelly exercise those explosive plays down the field. Man, those first 3 drives of the game when they, maybe I'll get to the confidence in Will Howard in just a little bit, but when they let Will Howard sit back there and throw the football deep down the field, man, those drives, it reminded me of Justin Fields, and it reminded me of C.J. Stroud when you had those really good quarterbacks back there, when it was the explosive, the home run type of play that Ohio State is known for, even going back to someone like Dwayne Haskins, even at Ohio State. And then you look at wide receivers like Jackson Smith in Jigba, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., and even Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and some of these guys that are having good young careers right now in the National Football League. It kind of reminded you of that, right? It maybe hasn't been that the last couple of years. Still been pretty darn good. Buckeyes are still Buckeyes. But it really kind of took you back to when Ohio State was creating those big chunk home run explosive plays down the field. I think it was fairly obvious that Chip Kelly saw the advantage, and I think it was fairly obvious that Chip Kelly said to Will Howard, we're going to put the ball into your hands. We have confidence in you to go out and make plays. And Will Howard he made plays. He made plays. When he's on, he's a really good quarterback. I know we've certainly seen, when we talk about the peaks, but we've certainly seen some valleys at times. Of course, the Michigan game, the couple of interceptions is certainly that. But when Howard is good, he's extremely efficient. 24 of 29, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had that questionable call on the interception in the back of the end zone. Tennessee was playing man coverage. Man coverage against this stupid talent that they have on the outside. That's certainly a choice. I know they went to zone at times a little bit later on in this game, but they were taking advantage of those man coverage situations, especially early on in this game when they were able to create those explosive plays. Jeremiah Smith with the big touchdown was the first one, and then the big play to Emeka Egbuka set up a shorter touchdown to make it 14-0 in that game as well. It was just a huge advantage on the perimeter that they had over Tennessee, and they certainly made that happen. Now, it was all about balance as well, I think, as it pertains to Ohio State, even though the pass game really was certainly something that stood out. How about Trevion Henderson in the run game? Look, when he's fully healthy, he's that type of guy. He's that type of running back. When he touches the football, you hold your breath, right? Because he's got that explosiveness. He's always had that big playability. I know he's kind of struggled with injuries at times during his Ohio State career, but today was an example of when he's on, he can touch the ball and he can take it to the house. 10 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. If their pass game plays at this type of level, and Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins run the ball at this type of level, this is an Ohio State team that can absolutely beat anybody. This is an Ohio State team that can certainly win a national championship. Explosiveness on the offensive side of the football, certainly the name of the game for Ohio State to put up all those points that they did against a so-called top dominant defense for Tennessee coming into this game. But after the 60 minutes, the defense that was actually dominant was the Ohio State defense. Now, when you don't have Dylan Sampson running the football, right, he went out during this game. Squirrel White went out during this game as well. Now, you put the ball into the hands of Nico Iamaleava. Very easy for me to say. 14 of 31, 104 yards. Yeah, you're not going to be competitive against Ohio State. No matter how good their offense is playing, you're not going to be competitive against Ohio State when your quarterback puts up that type of numbers. Now, God bless him. God bless him, bless his heart, as they say down south. Nico tried his best. He tried his best to create with some scramble stuff because there was nothing open down the field, right? When your top option on offense, the SEC's leading rusher in yards and in touchdowns and the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, when he's not there, and then you lose Squirrel White, and these receivers aren't separating down the field, and the Ohio State defensive backs really prevent Tennessee from having really any significant threat. You've got nothing on offense. You've got absolutely nothing. And the options were quickly going away for the Tennessee Volunteers, certainly in this game. I saw Ohio State playing loose coverage in this game, right? I talked about that Ohio State preventing Tennessee from not getting over the top. I think that just goes into the personnel matchup. I think Ohio State was just better in the secondary than Tennessee was at the wide receiver position. And look, and we talk about those losses. I'm not, look, the Squirrel White being in there and Sampson being in there at running back, that does not change the win versus loss, certainly trajectory of this game. If those guys are in there, Ohio State, the way they played, the mentality that they played in this game, they're still coming out with a victory. So I want to make sure that is perfectly clear, right? But when you don't have that run game, when they're playing loose coverage out there, they're preventing anything from getting over the top and any big explosive plays, and they are daring Tennessee to run the football, and Tennessee knows that running the football, especially when they were down in that 21-0 hole, and it continued to grow as this thing went along, this just wasn't going to work. It was not going to work, certainly for Tennessee in this game. And Ohio State's defensive line just overmatched Tennessee. Now, 4 sacks, but Nico Iamaleava was under pressure a lot during this game. We know that Ohio State's defensive line, when they're on and they're focused and they're good, we kind of talked about that with the offense earlier on, but when the defense is dialed in, specifically when that defensive line is dialed in, they're certainly one of the best in all of college football. All right, folks, it is a rematch in the Rose Bowl. Man, close your eyes and imagine the sunset over the San Gabriels. You've got Ohio State, who has been in the Big Ten for decades upon decades. And then on the other side, you've got the Oregon Ducks, who came into the Big Ten in their very first year into the conference and won the league. A big versus big matchup. Where was Oregon conference-wise before they came to the Big Ten? Of course, in the now defunct Pac-12. This is a classic matchup, folks. This is an absolute classic matchup. It is Big Ten versus Big Ten. It's West Coast versus Midwest. And to be honest with you, these are the top 2 teams in college football. I don't think there is any doubt about it. Is it a little weird that the best 2 teams in college football are meeting up in the quarterfinals in the round of 8? Yes, it is a little bit odd, but this rematch, I think, is going to be absolutely epic. Really, one thing that pops into my mind when I first start to think about this matchup is that Big Ten championship game. Oregon's defensive line was maybe not as aggressive. It certainly wasn't as good in the allowing nearly 300 yards rushing for Penn State in that football game. Where is Oregon's defensive line going into a Rose Bowl matchup against the Ohio State Buckeyes. This one was 32-31 at Autzen Stadium all the way back on October 12th. I think if Ohio State plays at this type of level, Oregon has had time to sit back. Oregon has had time to get fully healthy across the board. They have had time to get focused. This is going to be absolute cinema. This is going to be an absolutely outstanding game. More coverage, plenty more coverage of Oregon, Ohio State in the days and the weeks to come leading up to New Year's Day in Pasadena. Ohio State rolls over the Tennessee Volunteers. It was over from the word go. And all those Tennessee fans, they're going back down south in not the greatest mood. I want to hear all of your thoughts on this dominant Ohio State win over the Tennessee Volunteers in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.